kind of firstly, kind of good afternoon, everyone. Thank you as well for kind of taking the time out of your busy days to jump on this webinar with myself from Microsoft and the HSO team. It's great to see kind of so many of you kind of names I recognise, some new names, which is great, and just kind of showcases what we're trying to do today, where we talk around kind of the Power Platform in policing and how we can look to enable kind of further improvement of people management within policing. So kind of before I hand over to the HSO team, I just want to kind of introduce myself and my Microsoft colleagues. So Rob Harvey, so I'm a business applications executive for UK Policing. So work across many different forces alongside Palm and Nick, who are also on the call, who kind of support as well from a Power Platform and dynamic side of things to understand how we can help and support with your different challenges and how we can use technology to enable and support that alongside our partner community with the likes of HSO. So before I hand over to Andrew to kind of take us through the various different elements we're going to kind of discuss today, I think we can kind of all agree that in any force, the most important resource is really the people. The individuals who kind of work hard to ensure that the members of the public in our local communities kind of have that best care and support that they can give to the local communities around us. So we think that kind of collectively technology should be an enabler that supports that. And today we want to showcase how by utilising the Power Platform, we can start to think about back office differently, where we can look to gain further actions and insights from our data about the people who work within the forces, whether it be joiners, movers, leavers, which I know we're going to focus on today, or other key back office processes. Microsoft technology can help enable greater action and insights to make sure that the technology is there to support and action against many different elements that we see across back office functions today. Speaking individually on a force level with different representatives that are here today or not here today, it's kind of amazing to see the momentum that we've gained across the Power Platform within public safety and justice. And I think we roughly have around 120,000 monthly active users using the platform in many different ways, which for me showcases the scalability and the efficiency of the platform and how it can support those different elements and processes within this public safety and justice space. And as well, it also showcases how you're leveraging your investment in Office 365 or beyond to really showcase that benefit from the technology to support those different elements. So there's many different ways we can support in this space, which I'll go into more detail towards the end of the presentation. I'm sure Andrew as well will kind of showcase how the technology can do that in more detail. But feel free to post any questions as we go. And from a Microsoft perspective, myself, Nick and Palm will be here to make sure that we can answer anything. And anything we can't answer, we'll make sure to take away and come back to you. So thanks for letting me kind of open up, Michael, and Andrew. I'll hand over to you and Andy to kind of go through your showcase.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rob. And I will actually kick it over to Andy to get started.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Andrew. Just a quick one, as Rob mentioned there, please do keep this interactive. Post questions in the chat as we go along. If the folks can, they'll try and answer that for you. If we can't answer it in the chat, we'll try and do a bit of a wash up at the end. So myself, Andy Venter, Head of Public Sector at HSO. I've been at HSO for about 12 months. Before that, spent a number of years on the Microsoft side of the fence, and before that, Oracle. What I wanted to do is just a couple of quick slides, shouldn't take more than about 1 or 2 minutes, just to sort of recap and introduce HSO for anybody that hasn't come across us before. We're a very long-standing Microsoft-only partner. We've been working with Microsoft now for over 30 years. We are a global organization as well, which means that we've got quite good scalability and access to resources across the globe. In the UK, we're actually now knocking on about 400 employees in the UK, 3 offices, Reading, Manchester, and Glasgow. HSO, very closely aligned with Microsoft. You'll see the badges on the top right-hand corner there as well, Inner Circle Partner. What that means is that we can actually influence Microsoft strategy going forward. It means that we're very close to development teams as well. And that way we can actually really make sure that we reflect our customers' requirements back to Microsoft. We're also a fast track ready partner as well. What that actually means is that we actually follow Microsoft best practices, and actually Microsoft do keep us accountable for our delivery as well, which is very good. You see the other badges there as well in terms of some of the awards and recognitions, Azure MSP partner as well. Bottom left-hand corner, huge investor in people as well. We've won a number of awards in terms of top 10 companies to work for, a number of years running, as well as a number of learning management badges as well. And like I say, huge investment in people, both with our apprenticeship schemes as well as graduate schemes as well. And then finally, bottom right-hand corner, again, all the badges are aligned with public sector. We've got those as well, working very closely with CCS, G-Cloud, DOS, etc., and also the certifications around cyber security, etc. as well. So again, like I say, we've been around for a long time. All the badges you'd expect give us really deep and broad capability around the Microsoft stack. Andrew, next slide. In terms of how we structure the organization, really we sort of do two different sort of levels. The first one is across the top there in terms of the industries, wide range of industries. Obviously today, focusing on blue light, police, which is within the public sector, which I look after. But what we do very effectively as well is bring knowledge and experience from other industries back into this industry as well. And you'll be amazed at how much some of that stuff is reusable as well, driving both in terms of efficiency, scalability, etc. as well. If we go down the stack, we do full Microsoft stack. So we have an ERP practice, we have a CRM practice, we have a data and an AI practice, modern workplace, infrastructure, cloud transformation, and also around Power Platform and Dataverse as well. And then finally, the wrapper that says that we can actually put a support wrapper around all of those services as well. And I think the next one is quite interesting. What we're doing with all those services, we're actually building out accelerators. One thing that we're realizing is that customers want to be able to drive a time to value. They want to be able to use reusable assets. So one of the key things for HSO is investing in these accelerators. There's a number of them on the screen, and we're continuously adding to that as well. You see at the bottom one, obviously there's a people accelerator. It's the one Andrew's going to go into a lot more detail today. But again, like I say, really focused on making sure we're building these reusable assets and collaborating very effectively with our customers as well. Next one. I'm briefly going to flash this one up. So we do use ProSci or ProC methodology across our adoption of Microsoft technologies. Change management, obviously a very key component in terms of bringing new technology or new processes into the organization. It underpins, like I say, everything that we can deliver. And what we can do with this one is we can do light or heavy focus as well. So you find that, some customers do have this in-house. For those that don't have it, like I say, we do have that practice that we can bring to the table as well to support customers with change management. Again, just a very quick mention, if there's any requirements around this, we can help with it. And then hopefully, I think finally,
there you go.
There's always a load. There's always a load. This one, just very briefly, just touching on some of our experience across public sector. We've been in this space for a while now. Like I said, really starting to drive scalability across public sector. And again, like I say, working in very close collaboration with both Microsoft and our customers as well. On that one, brief introduction. Thank you for the time. Andrew, I believe it's over to you.
Okay, Andy, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so thanks guys for the introduction. I will introduce myself, but first I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. To introduce myself, I'm Andrew Welch. I lead a lot of the technical work that goes on at HSO, and you can see here a variety of organizations that I've worked with across the UK and the US for the most part. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm not from around here, but I do live in London, and my daughter was born here, so I anticipate we'll be here for quite a while, and I am time zone aligned with everyone here, but I'm originally from Boston. My time in a blue suit was with the US Coast Guard, which is sort of like law enforcement and emergency services meets the Navy. So it was a wonderful experience driving boats before fully transitioning into the world of cloud software, data, IT, infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the perspective that I speak from. And I've worked, like I said, with a number of mostly law enforcement and MOD type organizations across across the two countries with a healthy smattering of law firms and financial services, banks and investment firms, et cetera. So the bottom line is organizations that are very, very conscious and concerned with compliance and regulation and security and getting it right the first time without a lot of room for error. So with that out of the way, I want to introduce a few concepts here, and we'll kind of get progressively more technical and subject matter heavy. Though I am looking at the Teams window. Can I get? Can everyone just sort of use the React? Give me a thumbs up, a heart, whatever emoji you want to send me for if you mostly represent an IT organization. If your orientation is mostly technology focused, I'd love to just kind of know what the breakdown is. So hands up, thumbs up on IT. Okay. And what about on operations, or as I would say, the pointy end of the spear? What about folks who come from an operational background? Okay, I'm seeing a few go up here. So okay, really, really good. Thank you for thanks for sharing that with me. This is my wife calling me. I'll just mute her. Don't tell her I said that. She works for Microsoft, so it's okay. She's fine. So in any case, I want to introduce a few kind of foundational. See, Parm's laughing. I like that. Thanks, man. I want to introduce a few sort of foundational concepts here, right? So when we think, and I think that people in IT organizations are increasingly thinking about this, but when we think about responsibility and control for the applications that we deploy and the data that we use within an organization, there's traditionally been a few different approaches. One is to buy a solution. So a solution already exists, a piece of packaged software exists out there in the market. We're going to go buy it and we're going to implement it. And at the other end of the spectrum, we have building it completely custom. And if you think about it, this makes sense, right? That the more of your own stuff you build, the more control you have over it, but the greater level of responsibility you have to maintain it and support it. So at the buy end, traditionally, there's been a lot of configuring, customizing, extending of those solutions that are prepackaged. And at the build end, that's where we've talked about implementing an entire cloud platform. We're building with a microservices or serverless architecture. And in the middle, there's this very wide space that we are increasingly calling composable, right? So this is the quote unquote composable space where you're neither building something from scratch, nor are you buying something and being forced to use it the way that the vendor or the software developer wanted you to use it, but rather you're taking bricks, building blocks, and you're building your own thing, and you're extending and kind of composing your own technical ecosystem within the organization out of building blocks. And that really is what Power Platform specifically and the Microsoft Cloud are all about. So let's look at, just kind of to level set everyone on the technology that we're using, let's look at what we're talking about here. So the Microsoft Cloud includes several buckets of technical functionality that you may have heard of. So we have Microsoft Azure. We have developer tools, so software developers can build applications on top of or using the services within Azure. We then have Power Platform, and I'm going to talk much more about that because that's really the focus of our discussion here. Dynamics 365, you may have used these applications, but D365 applications are the finished software applications that Microsoft has built out of Power Platform and Azure components, okay? We then have Microsoft 365. You definitely have used this. This is your email. This is Exchange and SharePoint and Word and PowerPoint and Teams. So that's M365. And then finally, we have these industry-specific components. So these are the components and the applications that Microsoft and Microsoft's partners have built that solve specific problems within industry. And all of this is built on top of Microsoft's core platform capabilities around identity, security, governance, and compliance. And while we're on this note, I really hot in my office, so forgive me. I actually am wearing my Azure swag here. So in any case, just pardon me a moment. In any case, let's kind of pull the drawer out on this a little bit, because our focus today is going to be Power Platform and these industry-specific components, okay? So when we think about this, Power Platform is made up of a series of technical services, apps for building apps, whether it's for your web browser or your phone or a tablet. Power Pages for building externally facing portal applications. So one use case, or one effort I was involved in a couple of years ago, was using Power Pages to build a portal so that individuals who are on parole could manage their whereabouts and check in and manage their their profile, their contacts, everything having to do with their status as a parolee. So it was a potentially unglamorous workload, but it was important nonetheless. Power Automate for automating business processes. I know that some of you are working with RPA, which is a technology that's embedded into Power Automate. Power BI for reporting, business insights, interacting with your data, and then finally Power Virtual Agents for building intelligent conversational chatbots. So if you read the news, I think you're going to find a lot of functionality piped through Power Virtual Agents in the near future. So what we've done with People Accelerator is that we have taken these tools and built a collection of components that are specific for public sector and for law enforcement. And the idea here is that rather than you all taking Power Platform or maybe Azure or Microsoft 365 services and always having to build from scratch, or say working with someone from my team to build something for you, over time, we gradually are collecting what we consider to be the greatest hits. So if we find a use case or a workload or a business requirement and we say that is a good idea and we are tired of building this from scratch every time, we're going to build those components into the People Accelerator so that they are available to all, and that you can take them and we can take them and accelerate our development on the platform. And I'm going to show you some of these specifically. So there's two ways that you can use People Accelerator, right? One of them is to rip and replace your legacy big HR system, right? And I'm actually working with and have worked with several agencies, several organizations over the years that this is the exact approach they have taken. Hey, we have a legacy HR system that no longer meets our needs. We're going to take this technology and we're going to take People Accelerator and use it as our foundation to eventually wholesale replace the big HR system. The second approach B, that you can employ here is to use People Accelerator and Power Platform to extend your big HR system. So maybe big HR is meeting the needs that you have just fine, but isn't really good at some of the edge cases or some of the extension needs, or is not particularly good at cost effectively helping you meet new challenges that you didn't know you had, right? So this is the scenario in which People Accelerator sits next to big HR, Power Platform sits next to big HR, and you use these components to integrate and extend with it. Both approaches are valid, and I've seen both approaches work pretty effectively. All right, so before I get into kind of walking you through what the map, the ecosystem map, I call it, looks like here, let's hit a few highlights of the capability. So the first, I mentioned Power Pages. This is this ability to use this technology to build externally facing portals, okay? So I mentioned the use case around managing parolees, but a very, very popular, a very, very common use case here is to use Power Pages to build an externally facing capability so that those who are applying to be hired into your organization can interact with an app of their own, but also so that the joining process, the things that happen before the individual turns up for work on the first day and is given access to your internal systems, some of those joining processes can be kicked off and gotten underway in a way where that data that they generate, say they're going to create a profile and they're going to spec out maybe their medical record or their financial history or whatever it is you need to make a vetting decision, right? That data can then follow them as you like in a secure way through their lifetime in the organization. So these portals are extremely popular and they're extremely versatile. The next, and I'm actually going to show you a few examples of this, is integration with Power BI, right? So if you're already using Power BI, you can actually point Power BI towards these data sets to generate insight and business intelligence for yourself within the organization. People Accelerator, true to form, comes with, and we've built some popular components, but you can use Power BI, the sky's the limit for visualizing data the way you need. So here we see, this is a running history of who is on leave, who's assigned to what, who are we overburning, and I'm actually going to show you this in practice here in a few minutes. But you see, the red triangle means we've burned them too hard. The yellow triangle here means that they have some slack capacity. Okay. And then we see another example here that I will also show you. You sort of actually can see a preview of my Star Trek themed sample data that I'm very proud of. But this is the requirement of finding the right person for the job based on their skill and their competency and their training profile. And then finally, continuing with the sample data theme, here we've taken the application and we've embedded HR self-service, in this case, to manage your own prescriptions or to schedule a medical checkup or whatever. We've taken this and we've embedded it inside of Teams, which you may very well already be using. And I think that what's important to just say here is that a huge part of the capability using Power Platform and People Accelerator to extend your big HR or to replace your big HR is that historically, HR systems have not been developed with public safety, public health organizations, or emergency response organizations in mind. This is why we see such strong uptake of this technology, say, among police forces or emergency response units or MOD type organizations. The reason is because these types of organizations have some really specific requirements around vetting, around being able to manage, in this case, someone's medical history. It is relevant to a lot of these types of organizations, what prescriptions you are taking and how that might impact your performance on the job. That's something that most organizations do not have to contend with, and therefore it's not a requirement that most big HR plans for or has anticipated, at least in a cost-effective way. So, sorry, I've got a tickle in my throat, so I'm going to need some water as we go through this. So let's talk a little bit. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey here. This is, think of this, I've put this together based on journeys, so to speak, that other similar organizations to yours have themselves taken. The important thing to know here is that we can start almost anywhere. It's easier if we have access to core personnel data, but we could start with facilities management, say, to manage your real property footprint or to manage who is assigned to which spaces or who has a desk where or who has access to what. We don't have to start with traditional HR. So let me take you through this. In a lot of scenarios, despite what I just said, we do start with traditional HR. Basically, we need to pull together personnel data from a lot of places. It's living in spreadsheets, it's living in a big legacy HR system. Maybe we need more local control over some of this personnel data. So this is a classic example in very large organizations, right, where there's a central HR system, but individual departments or offices or geographies need to decorate that core HR data with local data that's specific to them. So those are great scenarios. In our journey here, we're going to take that and we're going to use a technology called Microsoft Dataverse to establish a single source of truth so that we can manage personnel records, the vetting of those personnel, tasks around onboarding and offboarding. In some cases, if a security clearance or some sort of formal vetting is necessary, we can manage that here as well. Pay and benefits, the list goes on, but I think this is pretty illustrative. In a lot of these organizations, now that we have this core personnel data, we can start to decorate it. So we can build we can build on top of the module that exists in People Accelerator, a medical capability. Maybe it's for core medical records or for vaccination management or psychological records. I've seen some really strange use cases over the years, but I think my favorite was that I worked with the joint American-New Zealand scientific mission to Antarctica, and they had a very, very big concern about psychologically screening their scientists and their support staff to go and be checked out to spend 6 months in darkness every year. So that was something that we actually managed through this application, through a related similar application. So the sky or the bottom of the world really is the limit for what we can do here. Maybe we want to extend this into training. So we have our information about people, we know about their medical state, but what about their training? We can plug into a learning management system, right, to deliver training online. We can track competencies, skills, languages that people speak. This is hugely useful for finding the right person for the job. I worked with a law enforcement organization a couple of years ago that ran their own training academy. And there the concern was that in law enforcement in particular, it is relevant not just that someone has been trained, but on which version of the curriculum someone was trained, in case there is a mishap later and we need to go back and demonstrate, hopefully not, but even in court, that so-and-so was trained using this version of the curriculum, one for liability purposes, but also so that we can go back and make improvements to the curriculum itself. And a final very popular use case or workload that I see is around performance management. You know, performance management, individual employee goal setting, KPIs, reviews, appraisals, disciplinary action. Performance means something different to so many different organizations that the ability to sort of compose your own solution around it is huge. And we can then plug those applications into the single source of truth for data and put apps easily in the hands of our workforce. But once we've done this, we can start to extend this in cool ways that maybe have less to do with people, but because people are so central to who we are as an organization, it matters. So operations invariably involve people, task forces, assignments to duty, ROTAs, rotational assignments, the status of personnel, who's available, who isn't, all of these things, logistics, the equipping of those personnel, all of those things go into the operational readiness picture. And using Power BI, we can then take that information and put it real time or near real time into the hands of operational decision makers. We can do the same thing with facilities. So I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I have used this technology and I have used applications built with this technology to manage the comings and goings, who is keying themselves into a building at a visitor post, what color badge they receive, who has lost their badge, and what kind of disciplinary action we might need to take around that. So facility security is a very, very popular use case. And because we have all of this data about our people and where they work and what they're doing and what they've been trained in and what entitlements they might have, it becomes very natural to use this for the offboarding process as well. So to manage offboarding processes and checklists, and to, maybe you're managing benefits or you're managing a community of alumni in retirement or after having left the organization. So applying this to departing members is a very popular way to go as well. And what we've done now is we've built this start of employment to departure cycle where we're doing a lot less double entry. We are automating, hyper automating a lot more of our business processes and our administrative processes around this. But that leaves the whole the joiners. That leaves what about applicants? What about joiners? And I talked about this a few moments ago, but essentially, we can use Power Pages to build that external portal. We can use a technology called Azure Active Directory B2C to provide secure authentication for those individuals. And then we can pipe that into the common single source of truth for data, thereby saving so much manual effort and handoff between recruiters and people responsible for onboarding with your core personnel, HR management staff. And having now done that, we've built a start to finish sort of life cycle of people from before they even arrive to long after they have departed. So with that, I'm going to pause and see, are there any questions or thoughts?
Nothing in the chat, but if anyone's got any questions, they can come on and raise it or put it in the chat if they want.
Thanks, Michael. And I noticed just now we have the same number of participants that we did when I started talking, which is, I feel that is an extraordinary once in a lifetime achievement here. So anyway, okay, let's drill in now and talk a little bit about joiners, movers, leavers. I've also heard this, we also, with some organizations, call this the SLAM process. So starters, movers, and leavers. So let's look at the individual, okay? And one of the core principles to People Accelerator, and this is woven all throughout the toolkit, right, is the centrality of the individual person. What we are effectively doing is building up a profile or a dossier on this individual for the lifetime of their affiliation with the organization. Okay, so here you only actually see the tidbits, the snippets, the modules that I was able to fit in a single screenshot. Okay, but you can kind of get a flavor for it. These are some of the pre-existing, pre-built components that live inside of People Accelerator that you and we together can start using. Microsoft has built, and this has been a lot of years, this is a mature security model. Okay, this is not something that Microsoft created last year, all right, but has built a very, very deep security model that allows us to essentially say, even though we've built this 360-degree view of the employee, right, we can secure this not just down to the record level, but down to the column level, so that recruiters, recruiting staff see this, okay, but medical staff see this, and maybe your team leads see this. So the whole idea is that we can secure and bundle access to data, really for any data set that you choose and any combination of data sets. So the beauty of this is that rather than keeping this on a spreadsheet, okay, we actually are bringing all of this data together in a way that can be secured, managed, and governed both from an IT perspective and a business perspective. And when, say, one of your users comes along and has a bright idea to build their own app that accesses this data, the system knows, the platform knows to respect those data protection rules that you have put in place. So I can't simply build my own, spin my own spreadsheet in order to circumvent your data protection rules. If I try to build my own app using this data, I'm going to run into the same walls that you have put in place around your people. So it's an extraordinarily powerful capability to govern and secure your own data here. So let's put this into context of the joiners, movers, leavers process. So remember, I said that this thing goes with you, travels with you through the entirety of your lifetime with the organization. So, maybe we start here that, before and whilst you're joining the organization, you're building up your personal profile, your medical records, your competencies, vetting happens in here. And I will say more after all of these, because you have a lot of flexibility to add the columns and to build the data integrations that you need here. And that's certainly something that my team can help you with as well. So great. You've joined. This data is now going to come with you. We're not going to rekey it when we arrive at the organization. We're not going to keep it in one spreadsheet or one application for recruiting and onboarding and then have to move it from an HR perspective. And we can build processes, logical processes here, right? That this is a very simple job application process that you move someone from application to interview to offer. In this case, it would seem that Captain Picard is applying for a new commanding officer gig. So in any case, then on arrival, that HR data is preceded. We can automate the process of issuing specific kit to specific people in the billet or the position that requires it. So some people get a gun, some people get a phone, some people get a car. In the case of the folks down at the South Pole, for them it was you pass your psychological screening, you get triggered on an airline flight down to New Zealand, you get manifest on an Air Force, a US or a New Zealand Air Force flight down to Antarctica. By the time you get there, you have gloves and coat and boots in your size waiting to go. So when we pull all of this data together, we can automate it in really absurd and absurdly useful ways. So that training plan is built, onboarding tasks are assigned more and more as you grow with the platform. Okay, and this is all possible because we understand, right? Like the system understands that you have people. This is people, and they sit in seats. The people and the seat are not the same process. And we have a question in the chat here. Can I defer? I could answer that, but I'm going to give myself a break. One of the Microsoft guys, do you want to step in on this People Accelerator working with SailPoint question here?
Sure, no problem at all. Yeah, Rich, thanks for asking. I think kind of where this works with SailPoint from an identity and access management perspective is it kind of sits on top and can integrate with, rather than obviously kind of taking any roles or responsibilities that application can have. It's essentially allows that enablement to move that data or put that data into a point of access where it can then be done to inform different elements or accesses within this. So it can work with essentially. Just in terms of working with SailPoint. So hopefully that answers your question.
Robin, if that's a point of integration, then does that mean additional cost in terms of licenses and what have you?
Yeah, potentially. And I was going to come over to that towards the end, Richard, and just cover those elements. No, you're all right. It's a very valid question. It's certainly one that we can get to, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers, Nick.
Yeah, just a quick one to add there as well. This is an accelerator by definition, right? So this is a starting point to try and drive that time to value. It's not the end result. So something like SailPoint, the whole point about this is to collaborate with you guys to make sure that this fits in the right way. And to your question there around cost, there may be some initial cost involved in terms of developing this accelerator for a specific requirement, but the whole purpose here will be to try and reuse that once it's been developed once. So I think we're looking to work with you guys on that and going forward.
Yeah, and I can say from a technical perspective, SailPoint and People Accelerator share a lot of common technology from an identity management perspective. With Microsoft at the core there. So that is very achievable. I see another question here from John McNally. Where is the cloud data stored? I'm really tempted to say Russia, but I'm going to say the cloud data is stored in the UK. So Microsoft, the Microsoft Cloud operates facilities all around the world, and I'm not going to say that you can store it wherever you want, because it's going to live in the UK. We can deploy and turn these tools on in any one of these geographies that Microsoft operates. So we've got the UK, we've got Western Europe, we've got the Western United States, et cetera, et cetera. But the UK is for you guys where the data will live. Okay, so let's keep on. We're in the role. This person is here. What happens when they change? So here we're looking at position details. Right now, this role of commanding officer is assigned to Jean-Luc Picard, but we're going to move him now. So we're going to use automation tools when the role changes. That HR data is updated, kit can be reallocated, projections of staffing and force strength are updated in near real time. So fortunately or unfortunately, the bosses know pretty soon when someone is leaving the organization, and we can assign new tasks. So say, hey, you're moving into this role. Here are the things that you need to do based on the role. And all of that can be automated, and it's going to grow with you over time. So rather than having to make a big capital investment in a new piece of software to handle a change in tasking, think of this more like an ecosystem or a garden that you're going to water over time and improve it as you go and as the need arises. So now and by the way, me again, this profile is traveling with you and being built and layered up as you go. Now, through the lifetime that you're in the organization, you as the end user can access apps to manage your own stuff based on what what the particular Force has decided to put in play here. So this is showing you a screenshot of one of the kind of the starter application that if you like the user interface we built, you can use it. If not, you can use Power Apps to roll your own, so to speak. And this goes on and on until when it's finally time to leave the organization, we can check you out. We can assign the appropriate tasks. We can check the kit back into inventory. We know who's coming, going, et cetera, all the way to the point where you retire to your winery or to your favorite golf course. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up the slide portion before I get to sharing some live things by just recapping and saying all of this is possible because these components, these technical and then end user components live the data lives in a Microsoft technology called Dataverse, which can or could not be integrated with a legacy HR system. So use it standalone or integrate it, tie it in, plus Power BI, which a lot of you are probably already using to put that real-time or near real-time data in the hands of decision makers, plus all of that identity, security, governance, and compliance capability that I briefly mentioned earlier. So we have here Azure, starting from the left, I'll hit some highlights. We have Azure Active Directory for identity management working with SailPoint. We have managed environments from a governance and a security perspective. We have Azure Purview to govern your data, Azure Key Vault to manage security around some of these automated processes, et cetera, et cetera. So these capabilities exist, and you can turn them on and mix them and match them as if they're colors of paint to meet the profile or the requirements that you have. So with that, I'm going to slide over and hit some highlights in a live demo. Are there any other? I'm just checking the chat here. Any other questions?
Nothing in the chat. If anyone has got any other questions, then feel free to put them in there, and we'll get to those as well. We got 15 minutes, mate.
Yep, I'm tracking. Thanks, man. Okay, so People Accelerator, what this is, and I'm going to kind of give you some flavors. This is an app that's been built for employee self-service. So we've surfaced a few tiles here. It's being delivered through a web browser. We could easily do this through a phone or a tablet. But this is for employee self-service. If you like the interface, if you like the capability, go ahead and use it. If not, we can blow it up and start again with the tools we have. Remember, we're putting together building blocks. We're not developing from scratch. So I'm going to play the role of Captain Picard for this bit here. So I've got my personal details, my team, my manager, folks who report to me, and we can start to bolt on and tie different data sets in with this. Say, if right here we want to manage performance of my reports, sort of attainment of goals and their progress towards personal objectives we've set. That's a great use case. We manage our employment history, our educational history, our languages right here. Languages are really important, as some of you folks know, right? Finding the right person who's able to go into a situation where language skills are required and an interpreter is not available. Extending the language thinking here, we call these competencies. So really it's the ability to manage and self-report your own competencies. And then for some of them, you just can self-report, and some you can route, say, through Teams to a manager to approve. This tells us all about work assignments, right? So this tells us who's been assigned to what my particular responsibilities are when I'm working that. So apply that to rotas or rosters or duty assignments. My time is something that we've done that I just love, right? Because in a lot of places you manage your training time, your medical leave, your personal leave, your time within the organization. You manage that in separate systems. What we're doing here is we're compiling all of this because this is at heart a data story, so that we can make intelligent choices about, who is, like I referenced earlier, who's overburned, who's got some time on their hands, etc. And then here is a capability that we whip together to be able to manage for the captain here to be able to manage his own medical profile, report a medication, report a medical event, an injury, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot more runway here when it comes to user interface, but this is a sample of the possible experience that we've put together. And I see a question, so I know that's why Michael's coming back on video. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got one. Who owns the final built product? Would we be tied to HSA for any support or updates once it's deployed, or is it ours to do with what we want with?
Yeah. So the thing is that this is not a piece of packaged software, right? So if we're working together, we're working together to bring People Accelerator in. Once we're done, we can continue working together to do that, or you can customize it and configure it the way you like. And the things that you build on top of it, the things that you do with the building blocks, you actually own, right? So if you hate me, or if you hate my colleagues and you want to get rid of us and work with someone else, anyone who knows this technology stack, including your own people, can do it on your own. Okay, so now let's look at let's slide over and let's look at kind of what we see from a business intelligence, from a data intelligence perspective. So we've aggregated and collected all of this data about time and what people are doing with themselves and what competencies they have, and we can start to do some cool things with this, right? So from a project, or from a assignment to work, we generically call it a project, but it could be, like I said, a roster or a duty assignment, whatever you want to call it. We can drill in here. I need to refresh because it's been a while. I loaded it this morning. We can drill in here and to this particular mission, we called it, and say, okay, who is the right fit to be the mission leader? And this is going to intelligently look across my entire workforce and say, based on the requirements of this mission, based on the requirements of this duty assignment, these are the skills that we know you need. These are the people with the fit of skill and the fit of level of skill. And then these are the folks who have time to do it, because we've also aggregated all of their time commitment data, we'll call it. So we can see that Jean-Luc Picard is a great fit here, but he's a 0% time fit. So we might want to choose to go with Riker, Kirk, or Cisco instead. Other things we can do with this set of data, right? Here we've got the personnel status. So we're looking across people's time commitments and we're saying, hey, if we set a threshold of 8 daily work hours, these are the folks. Data is overclocked. Harry Kim is overclocked. Picard is overclocked on the 24th of October. And we can actually adjust this threshold. Listen, if our daily work hour threshold is 12 hours, I think these guys are actually like working 24 hours that day. So it's not, yeah, there we go. So if you're working a 24-hour day, then Kim is no longer overclocked. But if we're looking at a 6-hour day, everyone is now overclocked. So you can adjust those thresholds. Again, this is all in Power BI, so you can customize this as you need. And then finally, I'm going to show you here just the ability to come in and find a person, as we call it. So this is if you're looking for that really specific person. I need someone who speaks English and Klingon. I need someone who has a skill in diplomacy and interrogation, odd combo, and then they need to be qualified, operate a gun, and preferable if they are qualified to lead a mission. And by the way, I need them to have a license to practice medicine. So here's a fairly random assortment of people, but we've looked across that entire data set we have about our people, and we can now make recommendations as to who the best fit is. And maybe we need someone who's the best fit in a certain organizational unit or a certain department or in a certain geography, so we can browse that as well. And I'm just going to finish up in 30 seconds here by sharing all of the core HR is here as well, right? So we see the job position here for this particular individual, this doctor here. So we see the role for this person. We see the personnel file, the core personnel file for this particular individual. We see them represented as I called this person a contact before. We see them represented with all of their data rolled back to them. We see the application. So this is someone who's snaking through. This is that job application I shared with you earlier here. So all of the core HR capability is here. You can mix and match and cherry pick the bits that you need and then configure it and extend it as you need. So with that, Michael and Andy as the moderators, back to you guys, and I'm here for questions and follow-ups. Thank you.
Nice one. Cheers, Andrew. Rob, do you want to pick up?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrew, for taking us through that. I think what really kind of stuck out with me in terms of kind of taking us through that journey is the adaptability, in terms of having that kind of enablement to, once you have that core data set, be able to adapt it and suit your needs and requirements dependent on what areas you wanted to enable and improve. And I think that can be quite powerful in terms of understanding where you can make that data be a bit more progressive. And I know we had kind of a few questions from a licensing perspective and Dataverse, and we always do. And look, we'll always be honest and upfront that some of those elements do come with a cost in terms of licensing. But I think to that, and I think with Palm and Nick's support and the likes of HSO is really, let us work with you, let us understand some of those challenges. There is elements and leverages that we can lean on from a Microsoft perspective in terms of funding subject to application and various things. We can identify and support you with those challenges, look at the value aspect that comes with investing potentially in a platform to enable some of the technology we've seen today, to allow you to get more out of that data set and really start to bring those enabling factors that Andrew's took us through in terms of extending that data to really ensure and support that the element of that people management. So I think it's always a valid question. It's right to ask, Nick, and right to mention it, Rich, in terms of managing those elements. If you do want those integrations and you do want that kind of single source of truth from an interoperable data set, there is those elements there. But let us work with you. Let us understand what those challenges are. Let us try and leverage those different elements from a Microsoft perspective with the likes of HSO to support, to make sure that we can understand and understand the value that can bring to your force, really. So I think kind of that's where I'm at with that, and more than happy to kind of follow up with any kind of conversations or queries or concerns you've got with that. Myself, Palm, and Nick, more than happy to support around any licensing questions. We always are. We'll always be upfront, and we'll always give that honest truth. And yeah, kind of to kind of wrap up, Andrew, I think it's really excellent to kind of take us through that and take the time to kind of walk us through that journey. I think it's definitely an area where, from our conversations with the forces, that we think that we can support with the technology that we've got, and hopefully today's kind of showcased that to you all jumping on. So really appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon and allowing us to take you through that.
Can I ask one of the questions that we have been asked previously, hasn't come up here, but I just want to raise it and see if there's an answer, and maybe it's something that the people here have experienced as well, is if a lot of these organizations, a lot of these forces already have Microsoft 365, and a lot of them already have access to the Power Platform, where does this fit in terms of that? How quickly and easily can you get access to the People Accelerator if you've already got things like Microsoft 365 installed?
Yeah, do you want to take that? So, do you want me to?
I'm Rob, go for it. People have heard enough of my voice.
No problem. Yeah, I think definitely, Michael, it's a really valid point. I think from some of those elements you've seen today, there's definitely things you can pick up quite quickly. There's obviously quite a lot of capability in the Office 365 platform that allows automation, that allows kind of elements of virtual agents within Teams and Power Apps that we know the forces are benefiting from today. So there's definitely ways that can be introduced and supported from. But again, it goes back to understanding what's the challenge, what are the areas you want to improve. I love the shirt as well, Andrew, to be fair. Yeah, what are the areas, what are the challenges we're looking to solve, and where does the best benefit lie from bringing those different elements into that? I think that's where then you'll see the benefit, not from an Office 365 perspective, but also wider potentially as well, including the likes of different other investments the force might have made from Power BI, for example, and various things like that.